All right. Good morning and happy Friday, January 31st, 2020. This is Niki Ramirez here, and I am coming to you from my home office in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Really thankful to be here with you today. And I am going to be having the pleasure of, and am excited to share with you 3 predictions in human resources that will take us through 2020 and beyond. So thanks again for joining me. And as we get started here today, the first thing that I wanted to do was make sure that you had a little bit of an orientation to our system today. So thank you for joining me in our GoToWebinar platform. We are going to be using this platform as an opportunity to learn together and engage and communicate as well. So if you're new to the platform, thanks for joining us. It has been my preferred platform for over a decade, and I feel like it's a really great opportunity for us to connect. So what I want you to know about our session today and how you can use the GoToWebinar platform to your advantage is that you will be able to submit questions to me in a question panel. In addition to that, you are able to raise your hand to indicate that you are here, that you hear me, that you are in agreement, or that you have something that you'd like to share. And so you're welcome to try out that functionality. If you'd like to try to raise your hand, you can look in your attendee control panel, and there's a little sort of high five looking thing there. Feel free to give me a high five as we get started. And I'll go ahead and put hands down in just a little bit. But that's one piece. The other thing is that we do have a question panel in which you can submit notes to me about things that you want to either have me address during the session or follow up with you privately on. So please do feel free to submit questions, and I'll be working to monitor those questions throughout the course of our session today. What else about GoToWebinar? So I do have handouts available to you here today as well. So I'll go ahead and open them up so that you can kind of see what it looks like. You've got a PDF copy of our slides today. So as you download the slides, you should get a web browser open and see the slides that are there available for you to download, save, and take with you. So please feel free to do that. And any issues that you have with downloading the slides or the handout, please let me know. You can drop me a note in the question panel and I can email the slides directly to you. So that's it about our GoToWebinar platform. I hope that you're finding success and it's easy to log in and easy to participate. And actually, we will have some live polling during our session today as well. And so you might hear me call out during the session that I'm going to open a poll. I know that we often multitask during these types of events. And so when I call out for a live poll, feel free to jump back over to your computer or your tablet and cast your vote so that we can get everybody's votes counted as we go through our time together today. All right, so for those of you that I haven't yet spent any time with personally or much time with personally, I wanted to just give you the quickest overview of who I am and who is facilitating your session today. So I am Niki Ramirez, and I am the founder and principal consultant at HRAnswers.org. We are a consulting firm that considers it our absolute responsibility to help our clients reduce risk in their business related to human resources and dramatically improve the employee experience. Sorry, a little tongue twister there. But as we look at HR practice, we want to make sure that we do both of those things. We help our clients control liability through a solid HR foundation, and we help our clients create workplaces that their employees love. And we do this by helping our clients align their business goals and their HR programs, and that's where we see maximum results. So some of the things that our clients trust us to help them with are things like employee issues, employee relations issues, or sticky hiring and firing situations. And we also conduct small business HR audits and help our clients with complex projects like HR employee handbooks, job descriptions, and all kinds of different foundational projects that we like to get off their plate so that they can get on with business. So as on a sort of personal note, I wanted to also let you know that I'm a Minnesota native. I'm from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I transplanted to Arizona in 1995 to study Spanish. and I studied Spanish literature, and after graduating, started a budding career in community service and human resources leadership. And while I was at ASU, I met the man of my dreams, who you see holding up a Arizona SHRM picture frame there with me. That's my husband, Luis. He is we've been married almost 20 years, and he is an entrepreneur as well. He owns and operates his own law firm, and he contracts with HR Answers to help us with different types of things like policy and procedure development. And he also helps get us guided in the right direction, pointed in the right direction on things like HR and regulatory compliance training seminars. And if you're in the local area, you might even see us presenting together at HR seminars and conferences. So we are here in Arizona. We have some great kids, 3 kids, a slew of animals that we have on a little farm outside of Phoenix, and we really enjoy both pushing our businesses forward and helping as many people as we can, and spending great time with our family. So I'd love to learn more about you as well. So as we get started, let's try our first poll. I want you to hop over to your computer, and I'm going to launch our first poll, and I'm going to just ask you, what's your current job, title, or role? So let's test it out. All right, so you should see the poll pop up in your screen. Hop over and give me a quick vote. We'll leave the poll open for just about 45 seconds, and then I'll share the results. So this is sort of our first tester poll, just to make sure that it's working well. All right. You guys are an ambitious bunch. We've got 82% of our attendees in the live session today already voted. I'm going to give you 15 more seconds if anybody else would like to drop their vote during our live poll. All right, 10 seconds, and we'll close up shop here. All right, so who do we have on the call with us today? So it looks like about 52% of our attendees in the live session today are human resources managers, directors, or VPs. We've got a handful of human resources generalists already also filling our seats at 42%. We've got some business and operations managers and business owners with us as well. So thanks so much for participating in our first poll, making sure that it is working well. All right. So let's get going here and talk about our plan for our time together today. We've only got a short time, and we've got a handful of things to cover that I know you're going to find interesting and helpful as we go. So of course you signed up because I promised to share with you 3 predictions that will impact your business in 2020 that are HR related. Some of them are regulatory in nature, and some of them are more related to workplace culture and workplace environment. So I'll share that along with some actionable ideas that you can use to respond to these HR trends. So it's one thing to just sit back and do some reading, learn about what the trends might look like across different workplaces, but it's a whole nother thing to get ready to buckle down and get some real work done. As we conclude our time together today, I have a special offer for those of you who would like to have more conversation about these types of topics. This session has also been pre-approved for recertification credit with HRCI, and so I'll share a code with you there, and then I'll stay on for live discussion and question and answers. So before we dive in, I wanted to share with you just a little bit about how I selected our 3 predictions today. So as I look at the environment or the landscape of human resources, it seems like there's almost an infinite number of trends in HR, which I suppose is to be expected since human resources is the heart of your organization. And as the heart of your organization, you have to respond to a wide variety of internal and external conditions in order to be successful. So the research and the experience-based predictions that I'm going to share with you today, they represent significant parts of what I call your employment ecosystem. The term ecosystem is interesting to me because it is something that describes, a living organism. And the term was first coined in the 1930s by a British ecologist called Arthur Tansley. And he laid it out for us like this, and I think it fits really well into the framework of human resources. So an ecosystem is a community of living organisms in conjunction with the non-living components of their environment, interacting as a system. These biotic and abiotic components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flows. Ecosystems are affected by both internal and external factors and energy. And I think we can absolutely apply that kind of thinking to the HR function within any organization. We are in a position to influence the health and success of the entire organization, so the larger ecosystem. Your employment ecosystem is comprised of a variety of unique but connected components. And each of these components or HR foundations feeds off of the others, it nurtures the others. And essentially here, how you respond to each of the predictions and trends that are embedded in your ecosystem is up to you, but we absolutely have to do something. And as business leaders and HR professionals, it's our responsibility to build and nurture healthy employment ecosystems that create stability for our businesses and in our larger communities. And that will also ignite enthusiasm, excitement, and happiness in our employees, which ultimately is a #1 goal so that we have great, happy employees coming back. So let's get into number one of 3. So prediction #1 that I have for human resources in 2020 and beyond is that recruiting is going to take and stay in center stage. And what I mean by that, we are going to be operating our businesses in a continued tight labor market where recruiting great employees is absolutely a top challenge that is worth addressing in every business. And in 2019, we saw a gain in the United States of over 2 million jobs, which was slightly lower than the number of jobs created in 2018, but still an absolutely significant number. And the main reason that I find this significant and that it helps to establish this as prediction #1 is that our labor pool is tight and our jobs are open for longer, they're harder to fill. We simply don't have as many job seekers and qualified job candidates for all of the jobs that are open. And in 2020, we expect to see about 1.5 million jobs added. And because we're in a deficit already, like I mentioned, starting with fewer workers than open jobs, it's going to be important that employers establish, refine, and execute on expert, excellent, professional, consistent recruiting and hiring strategies so that you can fill the seats in your team that need to be filled so that you can service your clients. And when we think about the business responsibilities and the leaders in charge, we are going to be responsible for finding, selecting, and engaging in the use of practical and innovative tools and strategies to help us with successful recruitment, as well as forging partnerships that will support successful recruitment and hiring in our businesses as well. So my first prediction is that whether or not it's on your list of things to be focused on and assign team members to directly, we are going to need to make it so. We are going to need to allocate time and effort within our HR teams, within our business units to focus on recruiting. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I had a couple of questions come in, so I'm just going to pause for a second and let you guys know that the handouts you're able to download the handouts in your attendee control panel today. And if you're having a hard time finding where that functionality is, no sweat, just leave me a note at the end of our session today in the question panel and let me know that you need me to send you the slides, and our team will send you the slides directly. So don't worry about that. But yes, you can download the slides. All right, so let's get back to it here. When we think about the what-abouts and the how-tos, that's the most important thing here. So it's one thing to say recruiting is taking center stage. It absolutely is. We need to allocate resources so that we can be successful with recruitment and hiring strategies. So what we need to do, #1, I want us to make sure that we're treating recruiting as a mission-critical marketing activity. So talent acquisition, recruitment, and hiring is a function of both human resources and marketing, and of course sales too. So we've got a very complex and combined system that we need to execute on. And before we are jumping into recruitment, it's important to note that we need to also be investing time in analyzing workflows and current team needs and looking at our job descriptions, our compensation practices, and analyzing those, crafting a comprehensive job description before we jump into recruitment. And the job description itself serves as a guide rail or a tool that we can look to, hold on to, find stability from when we engage in recruiting activities. But the days of simply posting a job description as your recruitment activity are long gone. If we want to be able to stand out in the crowd, we are going to need to exercise some keen marketing abilities in the area of recruitment. And so what I wanted to do to kind of give you an idea of what that might look like is kind of dip into my community college faculty toolkit. So when I taught Introduction to Marketing, we talked about the marketing mix. And the marketing mix is this core principle in successful marketing. And so what I've done is kind of take it and modify it for the purpose of recruitment. So if you can look at your recruitment this way, build your recruiting system around this concept, I think that you'll find additional success, and it may become easier over time because the way that you're communicating with the world is setting you up for success. So the first thing that we do is make sure that we have the product properly described to our public. So the folks that are out there job seeking. We want to make sure that we have important information about job duties, location, scheduling, all that kind of good stuff. Beyond that, we want to make sure that we focus on the price of this, this thing that we're marketing, the job. So where we can, we want to share salary information, benefits, incentives. And in my travels with clients and with other HR professionals that I consider my colleagues and friends, I see that more commonly employers are posting the salary ranges for jobs in their initial recruitment, in their initial postings, rather than waiting until the end of the cycle, the recruitment cycle, waiting until the offer to talk about compensation. Oftentimes, we will get, if we're not sharing that information about salary and benefits and incentives ahead of time, clearly, we might pull through the process with us someone who is ultimately going to say no thank you, because they are not interested in the job based, solely on the salary. So we want to make sure to have a practice in place regarding sharing the salary and benefits and things like that. And then we look at the place next. So we've got product, price, and place. So we want to provide applicants a place to explore and access information that they need about your opportunity. So where are you going to put it? Are you putting it on different job boards? Are you putting the information out into your community via newsletters, emails, and personal contacts? You have a lot of different ways to do that. So we've got to build a communication, get it out there, and promote it. And so the promotion would also be related to the activities that you're going to engage in to spread the word, to market the job that is available. But really, ultimately here, we need to do things, we need to engage in activities that set you apart from the many, many, many other job openings that are out there. The recruitment environment, the landscape is crowded. And it looks just like the rest of the internet. We have all these job posting platforms, we have all kinds of jobs open, and you need to be able to stand out from the crowd and make sure that your recruitment ad, that it speaks to your ideal employee, and it gives candidates some insight into your company's mission and values, and a snapshot into job requirements and duties. So we want to give them sort of a comprehensive message about who the company is, what they get as an employee, what are the perks and benefits, things like that, and what is it like to work there. So lots of great companies are doing things like posting videos about what it's like to work there. I see some of my clients are using information that we gather in employee surveys. So if we're doing employee engagement or satisfaction surveys, some of the quotes that employees give back that are positive related to their employment, we also embed those into recruitment ads. So that's one idea about what we might be doing in order to support the idea that recruitment is taking center stage. And the next thing that we want to do with regard to recruitment is select and implement the use of a great platform to organize and manage an engaging recruitment process. So what does that look like? So it looks like finding a system that will help you spread the word. So you want to be able to post in one system and have that system deploy your job postings out to as many other sites as possible. You want your system to be able to engage your applicants right away so that there's no downtime. So as soon as somebody applies, the system looks for certain information that they've provided. And if they meet the first test or the first screening that happens in the system, then we're going to engage with them immediately. We're going to keep them engaged in the process. We'll be welcoming and warm, and we'll keep them moving as quickly as possible through some automatic integrations. And the program platform should also assist you with selection. So it should capture important details about what folks are telling us about their skills, their abilities, their education, their certifications, things like that. And it should be able to send out a list of questions to the candidate that they can respond to in writing, that maybe we call them like knockout questions. That's a term that I hear used often. And those are questions that if they answer them properly or in a way that satisfies your requirements, that you would allow them to pursue the next step in the process, which is maybe a phone interview or an interview. And if they don't give you satisfactory answers to those questions, then of course they're no longer a candidate, and the system will send them a kind message regarding their updated status either way. And the bottom line too here is that we want to have a system in place that helps us to stay organized, because it's required that we maintain information for the purpose of being prepared to answer questions about who we hired and why. So under different federal, state, and local non-discrimination laws, if a candidate comes back after not being selected and has questions about their non-selection, or they have an allegation that you did not select them for a reason that could be unlawful, you'll need to go back into your archives. You're going to need to be able to dig back through your system to determine who else was in the applicant pool and how were people sorted in and out of being viable candidates. And then how did you make your final selection? And if you have a great system, a great platform in place for this, you'll be able to use the technology to be able to organize that information quickly. And as I kind of talk about automatic integrations, I think it's also important to remember that if we want to be sensitive to the fact that automatic systems are not perfect, I encourage folks to take time to scan through and look at who is being sort of weeded out of your process immediately, where are folks dropping off in the process, and make sure that we're analyzing it to ensure that our system is not making decisions on our behalf that could be viewed as discriminatory. So if anybody would like to discuss that more deeply, feel free to reach out. That's definitely a whole nother topic. But that's the second thing that I think we should do in order to position ourselves for successful recruitment. And our preferred platform for this type of work is Jazz HR. And it's a powerful, really robust, super easy to use system that you can sign up for, and it helps you to get your job deployed out to 20 or more job boards right away as soon as it's up and running, your account's up and running and you're posting. And it has a very just, I think, expertly designed system for communicating with your candidates and keeping track of the communications. So I can remember back to when I was working in a particular school district program, and we had upwards of 200 or 300 employees, sometimes depending on the season. And we had so many emails and so many spreadsheets, and it was hard to tell based on the interactions of the team, who had touched what last and who was in contact with which candidate, and there was a lot going on. It was so busy, and using spreadsheets and emails simply wasn't efficient. And back in those days, this is about 15 years ago now, I wish I had had a tool like Jazz HR. So if you'd like to know more about Jazz, let me know. Another thing that I want to leave you with here as we turn the corner and start talking about number 2 prediction is that for the purpose of setting up your recruitment success, I want you to consider working with a qualified and capable recruiter. And that's not something that we do in our business, but I see that for my clients, they are often relieved and more successful when they outsource some recruitment to a qualified recruiter. And that is someone who should spend time getting to know your organization, somebody that is interested in learning about your brand and your culture, so that as they assist you directly with screening and interviewing and candidate analysis and selection, that they are able to take it all into consideration and send you only candidates that they feel will be a great fit for your organizational culture, and they'll be a great fit for the particular job that you've designed. So getting expert support and guidance and advice on selecting great candidates, getting that well-trained outside expert eye is something that is definitely worth thinking about. And our team works with Erin Longmoon, and her organization is called Zephyr Recruiting. And she takes a really proactive and kind of progressive approach to recruiting in supporting getting to know the company before she jumps into recruitment. So she's a good friend, she's a fellow entrepreneur, and someone that I think that if you are in a position to need support with recruiting, you should be in touch with. All right, so let's hop into number 2. So first prediction is that recruiting is taking center stage. Prediction number 2 that I have for you is that we must stay focused on wage and hour and leave laws as they continue to develop. And right now, when we think about wage and hour laws that are sort of top of mind, we see that we have new minimum wage laws coming into effect here in 2020. We've also got an increase in the federal salary requirement for what we call exempt workers, right? So folks that are exempt from overtime paid a straight salary every week, and that jumped from $455 a week to $684 a week. And then we've also got some paid family leave laws and paid family leave benefit laws, as well as paid sick leave laws. So when we think about the paid family leave laws, right now, paid family leave exists in 6 states. So California, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, and this year also Washington State. And so the individual programs and the benefits for the workers that are qualified for some sort of paid family leave, they absolutely vary greatly across these states with regard to how the program functions, how the program is funded, who administers the program, and even what's the employer's responsibility with regard to the program. But the bottom line here is that these states are trying it out for us. And advocates in all other states are watching with bated breath to see how it goes and if it might work in their state. And so it's important to remember that as these paid family leave laws continue to bud in different states, if you're not in one of those states and you are thinking, well, gosh, I'm not in one of those 6 states, so no problem, I would guess that it is on a legislative agenda somewhere in your state. And so you want to sort of tune in and see how likely it is that there might be something for you to deal with in the near future. So minimum wage has also been a point of conversation in human resources recently. And so let's just kind of take a look at minimum wage and what's happening there. So this is a quick sort of historical journey taking us from 1938, when the Fair Labor Standards Act was originally signed into existence by President Franklin Roosevelt. And it brings us up to current day minimum wage. So starting out at 25 cents in 1938, bringing us forward to 2009 at $7.25 an hour. And I put 1991 on our timeline here because that's when I had my first job, where I was paid minimum wage and working as a child care and activities leader at an after-school program at Birch Lake Elementary in Minnesota. So that was my first minimum wage. And going from the 1938 to 2009, the last time that we saw the federal minimum wage increase by law, a lot has changed in those 82 years, but the minimum wage has been really slow to climb in concert with the rising costs of living across our country. And that happens for a lot of different reasons. And, we're not going to dig too deep into economics today, but, as an employer, you're charged with the responsibility of establishing compensation philosophies and practices within your business that are meeting the needs of your workers. And so those workers can then turn around and meet the needs of your community and your customers. And so we have to think about the minimum wage in terms of how is it affecting our business overall, the business's ability to attract and retain good workers, what's the appropriate place and position for folks that are making minimum wage, et cetera. And just quick note, about 1% of full-time workers in the US earn minimum wage. And the industry with the highest percentage of minimum wage workers right now is hospitality and leisure, and that is specifically food and beverage workers. So just an interesting point there. So what do we need to do about minimum wage? Well, you're probably likely, most of you are already paying more than minimum wage in your businesses, but it's important to stay up to date on the rules and regulations so that you can ensure that you're maintaining compliance with overtime rules. So even if someone's making more than minimum wage, of course, if they're working more than a certain number of hours per week, maybe 40 hours, like the federal rule dictates, 40 hours in a 7-day work week, they might be eligible for overtime pay. So we want to get up to date and stay up to date with those rules so that we can think about how the compensation is going to be affected if minimum wage continues to climb and we see wage compression within our businesses, because as minimum wage climbs and our lower wage positions in our companies are getting closer and closer together, there's less of a gap between minimum wage and our starting wages. It's important to consider what tactics might be appropriate within your individual business. And also just thinking about minimum wage here for a second before we move on. So we have 16 states that are currently set at the federal level for minimum wage. So 16 states have a minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. 29 states have a wage that's higher than that, and DC is at the top. Washington, DC is at the top with a $14 per hour minimum wage, and Washington state is not far behind with $13.50 per hour. And when we think about that, again, it's just good to know that we are considering the minimum wage changes and how they affect the compensation scales within our organizations. And as we think about we think about minimum wage, we think about paid sick leave. We've got 12 states that currently have established paid sick leave laws. And in addition to those 12 states, there are cities within Illinois, Texas, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania that have local ordinances. So I'm not peeling apart the exact rules, but again, the number of paid sick days that an employee might be eligible for, they range from maybe 3 days a year to 5 days a year. And then the reasons that an employee might be eligible to use paid sick leave, they also vary. The mandated reasons vary as well. So let's get up to date on these applicable rules and regulations and consider what that might mean for our company and for our organization, and make some moves to ensure that we are staying attractive in the eyes of those candidates that we're trying to attract and the employees that we are desperately trying to retain as well. All right, so next thing that we want to think about in relation to these changing and always moving rules and regulations, we want to ensure that you are creating policies and procedures and programs that are compliant with rules, but also support the growth of your business and the culture of your organization. And so when I say that, what I'm kind of thinking about is, we need to ensure that we have time tracking and record keeping policies that make sense for your organization. Oops, sorry guys. All right. So time tracking and record keeping, that means like everybody's not using paper timesheets or time cards anymore, but some people are. And everybody's employees are not ready to use an app on their phone to sign in and out, but some people's employees are. And so we want to put policies and practices in place that are logical within your business and that help you run a smooth ship. So we want you to have the data that you need to have a complete and compliant payroll. And we want to make sure that if you're ever in a position that you need to audit your timekeeping for the Department of Labor or an industrial commission or wage and hour board, that you have all the information that you need because you've developed a standard policy and a practice for things like tracking time worked, keeping it, archiving it, and tracking for overtime as well. And that's one of the biggest areas of enforcement that we see from the U.S. Department of Labor still in the wage and hour realm is the attempt to audit and find issue with overtime pay. So let's make sure that we have a good policy in place that helps our employees understand how they get permission for overtime and what happens if they work overtime without permission, because that happens too. And spoiler alert, it doesn't mean that we reduce their pay, but it means we might need to coach or counsel them. And then we need a policy and practice and a really, sort of simple but snazzy system to calculate overtime pay for us, especially in situations where employees might be paid 2 pay rates. So that's something that I see quite a bit in my travels as an HR consultant, and again, just lots of friends in HR, that we have employees that work in different jobs, and sometimes those different jobs carry a different pay rate. And so we want to make sure that whether we're using a set overtime rate based on the job that's being performed or a weighted average, that we have a great policy in place and that our system is able to help us track that. So again, what we need to do about these ever-changing laws on an annual basis, we need to analyze and refine our policies and procedures and make sure that they're compliant, but also they support the growth and the culture of our organizations. Okay. And again here, before we turn the corner into our next prediction, I want you to think about establishing your own compensation philosophy. And so when I say that, what I mean is establishing a formal statement that documents your organization's position on employee compensation. And so you might be looking at sharing information about how you determine base pay, if you have ranges. You might have broad ranges, or you might have shorter specific ranges. You might have bonuses and incentives that are dictated or included in certain types of positions. You may also wish to talk about benefits and perks and things like that as well. And once you have this philosophy in place that you've sort of poured your heart into, you want to make sure to share it far and wide and talk to your team about it, train your team, train your leaders across the organization, and get it out to your employees as well. And weave the language from your compensation philosophy into things like your recruitment ads. And then finally, we want to think about using our compensation philosophy as an anchor for making compensation related decisions. And I know from experience that oftentimes when we are working on the fly in our businesses, things are happening so fast, and we feel like we need to make decisions quick, or we might lose a candidate, or make decisions quick about an overall department, or things might go downhill. So when we have a compensation philosophy in place, it helps us to minimize the instance that we might go off track in order to make sort of a harsh or hasty decision to react to a gut feeling. So having a compensation philosophy in place is great. And if you want to take a peek at your screen, you're welcome to look at the Stanford University compensation philosophy. And I like this sample a lot. This is just on their website. It's not hard to find or anything like that. But Stanford, this is how it reads. So Stanford is committed to providing a fair and competitive staff compensation program that will attract, retain, and reward high-performing employees at all levels. The university is also committed to providing a total staff compensation package tied to the attainment of individual and group results and the achievement of organizational goals. And then they've also kind of expanded it a little bit, and it talks about the primary principles that guide the compensation program. So first, they're going to look at pay that is pay what the job is worth. So doing some sort of market study, looking at also rewards and recognition for individual and group performance. So incentives and perks for individuals who may be performing at above or beyond the level that's expected. So I really want you to think about putting together a compensation philosophy that speaks to your drive, your interest in compensating your employees in a way that, of course, is compliant with rules and regulations. But beyond that, it helps to build your organization in a way that achieves your mission, that helps you live your values, and helps you ultimately achieve the goals that you've set for the organization year over year. So that kind of brings us into turning the corner into our next prediction. So prediction number 3 for where are we headed in HR in 2020 and beyond. So prediction number 3, as I see it, is that mission and values-driven organizations are going to win big. And what I mean by that is that mission and values-driven organizations, because of their commitment to talking about who they are, what they do, why they do it, they're going to be able to attract the right people. Mission and values-driven organizations are also going to be able to increase retention because we have the right people in the organization that are committed to the same mission and share the same values. And through increased retention, it's a great part of this ecosystem that I talked about in the beginning. When we have the right people and we're able to keep them in the job and they become experts in their job, engagement is improved. And when we have all of these pieces working together, we see financial performance improve as well. And that's a great bottom line impact that every HR professional is looking for. And as I was kind of getting prepared for our time together today, I found a study by a consultancy out of New York called Imperative. And their business focuses on providing peer-led coaching platforms. And the study that they completed, though, said that mission-driven workers are 54% more likely to stay for 5 years at a company and 30% more likely to grow into high performers than those who arrive at work with only their paycheck as the motivator. And so again, I'm going to share with you some ideas for how can we spark this sort of ignition where people are excited about the mission and the values in the organization. But those are some pretty high numbers. So 54% more likely to stay for 5 years. I know that, gosh, I can't think of any business that I work with or I'm exposed to at this time that wouldn't like to see an uptick in retention. And there are, across different industries, of course, we see different retention trends, but all in all, having someone stay in a company for 5 years, that's a really nice accomplishment. So an additional study that I did find was a Deloitte study that revealed something that was striking, and it was related to engagement. So the Deloitte study said that 73% of employees who say they work at a purpose-driven company are engaged, compared to just 23% of those who don't. So helping people to understand what the mission and the values of your organization are and how your organization benefits the community, benefits your customers, benefits your clients, your patients, your students. It's such an important piece of the HR practice and the business practice overall. We really need to be working to ensure that our employees understand the missions of our organization and the values, and that we use that understanding to increase the efficiency of the work that they're doing. They get their work done with more excitement, and it really creates opportunities to succeed together. So what do we need to do to create a more mission-driven organization? So some of the things that I see employers doing that seems to be working is creating opportunities and activities through which you live your mission together. So what do I mean by that? So I'm seeing paid volunteer policies requested by my clients quite a bit. And that's actually one of the policies that I would be happy to share with you. So if you would like a copy of our paid volunteer day policy, feel free to, in the question box, just drop a note for me and let me know that you want me to send that over. But a paid volunteer day policy, for some companies, it means that everyone in the organization who wishes to participate or who can, based on their schedule and based on their responsibilities, can participate, that they go together to a volunteer activity at one location or to serve one organization. Sometimes paid volunteer day policies allow for employees to select an organization and a day that works for them and to be paid for that time. So I recently wrote a new employee policy for a plumbing and electric company that is interested in ensuring that their employees who are out and about in the community every day, day in and day out, that they feel that they have the ability to give back as they see fit. And so they pay 16 hours of volunteer time each year. Another way that we see employers creating opportunities to live the mission together with their employees is to create community support or community support options within the organization. And so that might look like hosting a winter coat drive for a local homeless shelter, or something like a sock drive. One of my clients did a sock drive this winter for a local homeless shelter. You might also host a food drive that helps stock a local food pantry, or like another client of mine, you might decide that you are going to simply collect funds to be donated to a local family who's suffered some sort of tragedy. So I had a client who one of their community members recently lost a home in a fire. And so they, through their employee group, raised a couple $100s right away to help to ease the burden for that family and their community. It wasn't an employee within the company, it was just a community member. So we want to be able to create these opportunities, offer activities where people can feel connected. And in addition, we want to make sure that we have policies and protocols in place regarding how we're going to manage and move any goods or money that is collected during the process. We need to make sure that donations are safely stored, that money is accounted for and safely stored as well. And we want to make sure that we can get these goods or this money to the intended recipient without any type of issue. You know, our employees are going to be looking to us to manage the process in an ethical way. And so we want to make sure that we have these policies and protocols in place. So I hope you have a good brainstorming session and you can work on some ideas for linking activities that you organize or allow your employees to be organized in that support your community, support nonprofit efforts, and really speak to and highlight the mission and the values of your organization while you're doing business as usual. So we want to get out there and work in support of our communities, because we know that employers who are committed to helping build great communities are more successful employers. And we know that when employees feel that they're having a positive impact on their community at large, it makes them, you know, really want to be involved with the company longer. So we find that we're able to tap into some employees' discretionary effort just by being caring. And caring and compassion can really unlock doors. And so as we talk about caring and compassion, let me share with you the last idea that I have as a to-do. So prediction number 3 was that mission and values driven organizations are going to win big. And so the last thing I want you to think about today is engaging in activities that get your employees to fall in love with you. And I know that might sound like a big statement, right? But I really want you to think about establishing and teaching employees about your mission and your values, and talk to them about how that helps them grow and how that helps them learn and how that helps them, again, improve the communities in which you live and serve. And I also want you to take time to please and show your employees that you truly care about them. You know, maybe we are looking for ways to honor employees' talents and their efforts through reward programs. Or maybe we are establishing different types of programs that let them be whole. That's one of the other items that I have on my list there. We want to help our employees fall in love with us by letting them be a whole person, and establish policies that allow them to work from anywhere, or have an unlimited vacation policy. You know, if you want to chat about that, I have a couple of clients and I have other colleagues that work in businesses where unlimited vacation is a real thing. And so there's some real good data that shows that it can work for the right organization. Letting employees be whole also means things like, you know, helping address issues with medical needs or disability or social emotional issues that are popping up in employees' lives. But we respect them as an individual. We respond to their needs individually and with care and compassion. And we do that, of course, through establishing great policies and protocols, and then teaching our managers and our leaders across the organization to be responsive and to be compassionate and kind as well. And so those are a few of the things that I have put together and wanted to share with you regarding some of the trends that I am seeing out there. And as we sort of close up our time together today, and we've come near the end of our time, I did want to share with you that I have a couple of options for continuing the conversation and even working together if that's something that you're interested in. And so I have some new opportunities for strategy sessions. If there's a pressing HR question in your organization that you'd like to talk about, we can do a single strategy session. And in 2020, we are also engaging in the process of employee handbook policy audits for our clients. And so if you'd like a second set of eyes on your employee handbook, let me know. You can do that by simply registering on my link there for an initial consultation or dropping me a note in the messaging. It's not going to cost you anything to chat with me about what you'd like to do. And even if it's not working together, I can give you ideas of things that I see people doing to improve their employee policies and procedures. And then lastly, I hope that you join us for our next upcoming webinar. It's another complimentary webinar on February 28th, where we'll be talking all about coaching through tough employee issues. So one of the biggest challenges that I see out in the workplace is that folks are having a hard time coaching and helping their employees feel comfortable when things aren't going quite as well as they expected. So we're going to talk all about that. We'll have another hour together on Friday, February 28th. All right, so that's a little bit about how we can continue the conversation. Also, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, find me there. Up on the screen right now, you have your activity program ID for our time together. So this is an HRCI pre-approved session, and the activity ID is 51335. So if you have a PHR, SPHR, or similar certification through HRCI, this program qualifies for 1 hour of general recertification credit. And that's all the housekeeping odds and ends and nuts and bolts. And as you exit our exit our webinar today, I did want to ask you to just complete our quick survey so that I can get the valuable feedback that helps us build great programs for our community. And let us know how we can be of support if possible. And so now as we conclude our time, I'm going to open up my question panel, and I'm going to read through the questions that have come in the last few minutes that we have together. We've got about 8 minutes before the hour. So I'm going to scroll through my questions, and I will answer them as we go. And if you have an interest in engaging in a live verbal conversation, all you got to do is raise your hand and I'll unmute your mic for you. All right, so let me go ahead, and I see lots of notes about sending the volunteer policy. That's totally awesome, and I will send them over to each of you. My team will get those over. All right, thanks for your patience while I scroll here. All right, so the first question that came in talks about wage compression. So that's something that we talked about when we were in our first in the conversation, about our second wage and hour issue. So any suggestions for wage compression? We're a minimum wage job provider, and those are some people that have been in positions are getting discouraged over the years because maybe the minimum wage is rising up to a place where we're getting close to those supervisor positions or the next sort of skill level positions. And so when we look at tackling wage compression, it's important to engage in some market study. So looking at what's happening in your local area, that's the first suggestion that I would have. And then digging in and looking in your industry as well, so that you can also determine, in addition, what's happening in the competitors' workplaces, so that I can be as competitive as possible within my budget. So do some market research. That's the first piece of it. Do some industry research. But beyond that, I think it's important to analyze job duties and job functions and see what you can do to move responsibilities around or compress jobs if possible. We don't want to burn people out. I'm a very practical HR professional, and I don't believe in burning people out. I think that we need to be careful and take care of our people. Our employees are often our neighbors and our community members, so we want to treat them with kindness and compassion as we build these jobs. But look at ways to reorganize job duties, and maybe there are jobs that can be combined. Maybe there is some overlap, and maybe some jobs have sort of become irrelevant, or some job duties. And so as we move job duties around, we can look at reanalyzing compensation as well. So that's a couple of thoughts that I had there. And I'm going to scroll down through my question box here. I see lots of notes about great policies that you all have created, so thank you for sharing that as well. All right, do we have any advice on remote workers and the value that this could bring to an organization? So remote workers are absolutely a huge piece of the American workforce and the worldwide global workforce. And in terms of advice for bringing value to the organization, we know that overhead costs are lower when we have remote workers because we don't have to house them in our offices. But we also know that over the years, we've been able to track a trend in employee satisfaction and employee retention related to remote workers. So folks that are truly interested in doing remote work and that have the individual capacity to be self-directed and self-motivated, that they're going to stay in their jobs longer, even if they want to, they could potentially go somewhere to an office and make a little more money. If their desires are aligned with the remote job, we see people staying longer and costing us less money overall as an employee. And so we see higher retention, and then we see some cost savings as well. And so remote workers, they still need to be engaged. They're an important part of the team. They're a real part of the team. They're real people doing real work for our clients. And so we have to remember to keep them involved in day-to-day discussions. My team at hranswers.org, we are all remote. We have an office in Gilbert, Arizona, but we don't need to go there often. And so we use remote technology to stay connected and to see each other. We do video calls, and we do get together in person a few times a year. But remote workers are a great way, engaging remote workers, it's a great way to bring people together, bring people into the organization who have skills that you can use and your clients and customers can use without having to buy a new building to house more employees. Or you could send remote workers out into their new remote locations and move into a smaller office space. I have a client who did that recently, and they're saving $100,000 a year on their lease by deploying some of the work into remote work. So definitely, if you'd like to talk some more about that, get some time on my calendar, absolutely. All right, scrolling down my list here. All right, so SHRM code. So we applied, there's a question about the SHRM code. Do we have a SHRM recertification code? Our organization is in the application process to be a certified provider. So we're an HRCI approved provider for recertification credit, and we are still pending with SHRM. And so we don't have that today. We do have the HRCI code though. And you don't need an attendance certificate, just the code that I shared with you, which I'll read out again. The HRCI code is 513365, and the activity title is 3, the number 3, Predictions in HR 2020 and Beyond. All right, last question that came in says, how much do we see these trends expanding outside of the US? And that's a great question. So in my travels, I am blessed to be able to travel to the Caribbean, to the República Dominicana, so the Dominican Republic, and I also do some work on a board, a volunteer board that supports businesses in Mexico. And so I have a little bit of insight into those places. I also have one client up in Canada right now. So we see into the HR landscape in other countries, but how do we see these trends expanding outside of the US? For the first piece, so looking at recruitment and hiring, I really think that, the strategies that we are using here today, and the strategies that I encourage you to use, they are being used outside of the US already in organizations and industries where there is already technology embedded and where there is a high level of engagement in the workforce from a technology perspective. So, we see in other countries where the workforce is more tied to labor type work, if it's manufacturing or construction and things like that, we're not seeing the same need for recruitment strategies in those areas. But as far as wages go and paid leave laws and benefit laws and things like that, for other developed countries like the United States, we are actually behind the curve often in these areas where our wages trail in comparison, and where the paid family leave rules, for example, trail in comparison. And I was actually just this morning chatting with my husband about the number of days off that European employees typically receive in a year, and it was an average of 25 vacation days. And so that's in addition probably to different family and medical leave rules that apply. So, I definitely see that in some ways that United States employers are working to kind of catch up to that global trend for developed countries. And I know that there are other countries with which we work and we contract where, they are still far behind. And so we're still seeing, heavy outsourcing of manufacturing and things like that, because the wages are still staying remarkably low in other countries. And, as far as creating mission-driven, values-based organizations, I think that is a worldwide trend that we'll see continue. We know that as technology increases and folks are able to communicate more openly and freely, that people are asking for what they want, and they are demanding what they need. And so when we have employees out there that they're interested in family leave, they're interested in time off, or they're interested in volunteering and bringing volunteerism into the workplace, they're able to speak up about it, and they find strength in the conversations that are happening both through technology and at a worldwide level. So I think we'll continue to see some of the trends where the US is catching up, and we'll see also other organizations in other countries still trailing behind us as well as it relates to wages and leaves, and the idea of creating workplaces that our people love. So that's the end of our question list today. You guys all have my contact information up on your screen, and I really do mean it when I say it, that you are here today with me either in the live session or listening to this recording, and I consider you a new friend. So reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email and let me know how I can be of assistance. Or if you just want to talk HR, that's what I love to do. It's been my favorite practice for the last 20 years, so I simply can't get enough. So thanks for coming today and spending some time together. And please do complete that survey as you exit. And you will be receiving an email thanking you for coming with a link to the recording as well. So if you'd like to replay and watch any of this, feel free, and take care and go out and do well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.